I'm Philipp, and today I want to introduce one of the coolest AI applications that is around there at the moment, and that is OpenCode, an agent that lives in your terminal and can write code for you. So that is nothing new. You might notice from Claude Code or Codex CLI, but there are some features with OpenCode which I think makes OpenCode quite unique. One, it's open source, which is amazing in general, and that means it's a lively community behind OpenCode and you get many features very quickly, and therefore you can see where those harnesses like Claude Code or Codex are heading, because OpenCode usually has some features first. The other unique thing about OpenCode is that you are not locked in with a vendor. So that means you can, any model that you have API access to or subscriptions, and OpenCode offers a bunch of them, or you can even use it for free, or you can even use local models. And now I will hand it over to Rodrigo, who recently recorded a video course for Real Python going deep into OpenCode. And here are his 3 favorite features of OpenCode.
You can start a conversation with a model from a specific provider, and you can ask, for example, for a joke, and then you can use /models and you can switch to a different model. For example, now let's go from Gemini 3.5 to Gemini 2.5, and you can ask for another joke. And then, still within the same conversation, you can use the /models command and you can switch to a different model from a different provider. For example, you can try this free model from OpenCode Zen and you can say, tell me yet another joke. This is a pretty unique feature that unlocks some very interesting use cases for more advanced projects. Now go ahead, run /exit. One thing that may be interesting for you, it's going to depend on your personal preferences, of course, but you can run OpenCode Web, and this will open a web client for OpenCode. Once you press enter, your default browser will open and you will see an interface like this, where you can open a project or open a recent project, and you can have a session directly through the browser. Finally, if you open the OpenCode documentation, you're going to find a section on configuring different things, and you will find a very long list of different features and add-ons that you can use within OpenCode. For example, you can have OpenCode run specific formatters whenever it modifies your Python files, or you can just enable a Python LSP server so that whenever OpenCode modifies one of your Python files, it automatically uses the LSP server to check things like syntax, if there's possibly any linting errors, if it's using variables that don't even exist. The type of diagnostics that you get from an LSP server, you can bake them into OpenCode directly, among many other things, as you might see from the extensiveness of this list. These are some of the features that make OpenCode more unique and make it a very customizable agent for your agentic workflows. These are just some of the characteristics that allow you to customize OpenCode to your preferences and needs.
One of the best ways to learn a tool is to actually use a tool, and that's why we have prepared some code for you that you can use in order to explore OpenCode. The code that you can download below this video is based on a tutorial we created on Real Python about building a contact book with Python, PyQt, and SQLite. However, Rodrigo adjusted the code with textual to make it a terminal user interface. And he's using UV in order to make everything installable and convenient to use. If you want to follow up on the tutorial and textual and UV, I will also put the links below this video. But the important part is that Rodrigo also introduced some bugs to the code. And your challenge is to debug the code with OpenCode. So go ahead and download the code for RP Contacts. You may pause the video and get everything working. And then you can follow Rodrigo doing the first steps, starting the RP Contacts application, and he will show you what's not working and what you have to fix.
In order to use OpenCode to implement a feature in a Python project, you need a Python project to work with. So go ahead and from the downloadable materials, download the RP Contacts project. And once you've downloaded it, cd into it. The project RP contacts, or in this case the folder, contains a couple of different files and folders already. So the files include project configuration, project setup, and the folder src for source contains the source code for a simple TUI text user interface that allows you to manage your own contacts. Now, this project is managed by UV, as you can tell by the file uv.lock, and in order to run your project with UV, you need to have UV installed, which is why it was mentioned as a prerequisite in the previous lesson, and then you just type uv run rp contacts. Once you do, you give it a second, UV installs the dependencies for your project, and then it opens a terminal user interface, a TUI, that should look like what you can see on the screen. Now, by using the green button on the top right, or by using the keyboard shortcut A, you should open a model dialog that allows you to write a name, the phone number, and the email of a contact. Let's go ahead and fill that with filler data. And then you can navigate with your mouse or with your keyboard. Pressing tab will allow you to cycle through the different focusable elements and then enter to confirm your selection. Let's add one more contact. There's no data validation here, as you can tell, but that's okay for now. And then what you can try to do is you can try to delete a contact. If you select, for example, the second contact, if you make sure it's highlighted, and you try pressing the keyboard shortcut D, or the button delete on the top right, the button does not do anything. In the same way, the button clear all in the bottom right also doesn't do anything. So the buttons have been added to the interface, but their logic hasn't been implemented yet. And that's exactly the feature that you're going to add to this project. You're going to install and set up OpenCode, and then you're going to use it to make sure that the buttons of your TUI work correctly. Now, to quit your TUI, you can press the keyboard shortcut Q. You're presented with a modal dialog to confirm, and you can pick yes. Once you do, you might see some output from UV from when it was trying to run your project, and if you see a warning about the build system.requires and the UV version, that's perfectly fine and expected, really. So don't worry about that. So using the command uv run rp contacts allows you to make sure you can actually run your project. And the final thing you need to do is to set up a Git repository so that you can version control your project. And the reason you're doing that, even if you're not going to collaborate on this project with anyone else, even if you don't intend to publish it, is because OpenCode is going to be modifying your code. And while coding agents like OpenCode tend to yield good results in projects with the complexity of the project RP contacts that you're going to be working with, you can't tell beforehand what changes the agent will make. So having a versioning control system in place and being used makes it that much more easy to roll back unwanted or unintended changes. So go ahead, run git init at the root of your RP contacts repository, and then you can check that all of your files right now are not being tracked. You can add all of them with git add dot, and then you can commit them with git commit-m, and then something like starting point. Now, by committing, you're setting a starting point in your version control history that will allow you to easily roll back any unwanted changes that OpenCode makes later on.
All right, so your task is the following. You need to use OpenCode in order to debug the application. So what were the bugs? You can't delete one contact, and also you can't delete all contacts. The buttons for that are there, but there is no functionality behind it. And in order to use OpenCode, you of course need to install it first. So if you haven't done it yet, Rodrigo shows you how to get OpenCode on your system.
Once you set up your Python project, go ahead and open the OpenCode documentation and check the installation instructions. Now, you might try and copy the command you're seeing on the screen directly, but it's always good to check what the tool itself suggests as the preferred installation method at the time you are watching this recording. So go ahead, and follow those instructions to install OpenCode on your machine. For this course, let's use the installation script that's provided. Once the installation is completed, you can double-check that everything went smoothly by running the command opencode --version. If you get an error message saying that the command was not found, you may want to check the output of the OpenCode installation, because it does mention that OpenCode was successfully added to your path variable. So in that case, it might be just a matter of refreshing your terminal settings by running source and then the path to the file in which OpenCode reports it was added to. So you give it a second, and then you can try running OpenCode --version again. If you get outputs like what you can see on the screen, something that looks like a version number, then the installation was successful. Now the next step is going to be to set up the connection between OpenCode and an AI provider, because OpenCode, if you just run it, you're going to see an interface that's the interface for your coding agent. But OpenCode is just the interface you see, plus the harness underneath that determines how your prompts are going to be handled by the agent and what effectively gets sent to the LLM. Now, the LLM is what you must configure. OpenCode isn't tied to any particular LLM or to any particular provider. Before being able to use OpenCode to work on your project, you're going to need to connect it to an AI provider.
Okay, and that is the interesting part with OpenCode, because you can basically connect it to any provider. You can even use free models that come with OpenCode. If you have a subscription with Anthropic or with OpenAI, you can now connect your API key with OpenCode. Or if you want to go the free route, you can either download a local package using Ollama. At RealPython, we have a tutorial for that. You can check out the tutorial how to use Ollama to run large language models locally if you want to tackle the challenge with a local model. The perfect middle ground here is to use one of Google's models. So that is free. You just need a Google account and you still have the powerful models at hand in OpenCode.
Now that you've installed OpenCode and have an API key, let's go ahead and connect OpenCode to your provider. So start by running the command OpenCode and then press Enter. Once you're inside the interface, you'll want to run the command /connect to pick the provider that you're going to use. Now you can either use the arrow keys to go through the list of providers looking for the one you want to use, or you can type the name of the provider. Press Enter to select it. You'll be prompted to paste the API key. Go ahead and paste the key and press Enter again. After connecting, it's very likely that you'll be asked to pick the model from the provider that you're going to use. For this video course, you don't need anything very powerful because the project is fairly simple. So go ahead and pick a modest model that won't cost you a lot of money and that will allow you to get results pretty fast. For example, for Google, Gemini 2.5 Flash should be enough. And then you might also be asked about the reasoning effort or the variant for that model, which is going to define how much time and how many tokens the agent spends in the reasoning or quote-unquote thinking phase.
All right, and now you have the equipment in order to tackle the challenge. One pointer, if you want to get a little bit of a hint, there is something called plan mode in OpenCode. So check out the documentation of OpenCode in order to find this plan mode and then plan first and then debug with the normal build mode. If you don't feel ready to tackle the challenge just yet, then I recommend check out the RealPython tutorial on OpenCode, which goes a bit more in-depth about OpenCode in general. As all tutorials on realpython.com, you can read the tutorial for free, and I will add you the link to the OpenCode tutorial in the description as well. And if you don't feel ready to tackle the challenge even with the tutorials on RealPython, then check out the video course from Rodrigo. So you've seen already a few parts of it. And in the other lessons of the video course, he goes in depth into OpenCode and how to debug the application. The full video course is the perfect deep dive into OpenCode. In 10 lessons, you will learn how to install and set up OpenCode, how to connect OpenCode to a third-party AI provider like Google Gemini. You will also explore the OpenCode interface in depth and then use OpenCode to work on a Python project. While debugging the textual user interface that you saw in this video, you will also learn about the plan mode and its advantages. And then you will implement and refine features without even writing a line of code yourself. And in the end, you will understand all the OpenCode features that improve your user experience and your developer experience. As every video course on realpython.com, you will have video subtitles and transcripts, and you can download all the slides from the video course. You can also download the prompts that Rodrigo is using, and you can do an interactive quiz in the end. So check out the video course on realpython.com and see you next time.